Hello everyone, welcome to the new video. I'm really glad to have you here today. This experience happened to me almost 40 years ago, in 1985. I was 19 years old. I have always had severe asthma in my life and my chest was not feeling well. One evening before Christmas, I suddenly started having shortness of breath. I was very worried. A heavy pressure, like a stone, was on my chest. I forced myself to breathe as hard as I could, but the pain was too much. Eventually, I very consciously gave up trying to breathe. As soon as I stopped breathing, the pain went away instantly. My consciousness shifted to my head, and I remember thinking, well, that's it. This was my share of life. I was surprised by the peace I had. When I reached the end and I felt no pain, I thought to myself, nature had thought of everything. I noticed the image of small red sparks in front of my mind. Then my mind started flashing like an old TV, black and white and alternating. None of this affected my thought processes in any way. They were as clear as ever, if not clearer. But I knew that in a few moments I would simply die and my thinking would stop. But that's not what happened. Instead, I suddenly jumped out from above. I realized that my body had fallen on the ground, but I didn't know how it had fallen there. I was sitting at the kitchen table. I hated looking at that body. Clearly, dead bodies are disgusting to both the dead and the living. I went upstairs and found myself in a velvety, warm, and black space. I felt like I had the same shape as before. I had a very good feeling. I have always had health problems in my life, and this feeling of complete freedom from illness and physical limitations was very good. But I was a little worried that I would be left alone in a dark and warm space forever. Suddenly, a point of light started shining in the distance, and I was drawn towards it. The light became bigger and brighter. The extended gray tunnel experience you've probably read about aptly describes it, or the incredibly detailed image of Hieronymus Bosch painted around 1500. I sensed that this bright light was a conscious presence, and not just light, but a living divine being. What a joy and pleasure! At the same time, I became actually aware that I was dead. Not just dead, but dead again. I realized that this was a recurring experience for me, and I was a little discouraged that I had forgotten that this would happen again. I knew this experience very well, and I knew that I had died many times before. I was also disappointed in myself that I had not yet used my life and done nothing with it, even though I was young. Now everything was lost. It gave me a sense of wasted opportunity. I felt that gaining a physical life on earth was a difficult task. I also felt like I had caused my own death when I hadn't. It was definitely caused by asthma, but I knew that I was the real culprit in this whole affair. I was well aware that in a life that seemed to have just ended, I had reached a mental impasse. So I had decided to die because repeating the same old personality patterns in the future wouldn't achieve anything useful. I also became aware that everything that had happened to me in life was somehow created by me. Every good and bad experience, every relationship, and every hardship I had faced was actually mysteriously given to me by myself. God hadn't done this. I had made my own life for myself, It was presented to me simply and in a completely unbiased and non judgmental way. It was just a face. Now, this reminds me of a quote from Maitreya. Whatever is in front of you and around you, be sure that its roots are within you. Creation is within you. The roots of objectivity are in the mentality, and that mentality is you. I was worried that I was in an unfamiliar place. I asked myself to whom I should pray, for the situation seemed so dire, especially as I realized that death was not really the end of me. But should I pray to Buddha or Jesus or Muhammad? Which one was correct? I decided to pray to God so that He would solve everything for me. Out of desperation and need, I began a very deep meditation as if my life depended on it. Definitely, as if my future depends on it. I moved upwards. I refused to pay attention to anything that would distract me. I felt it was important to let go of everything, any personal identity and everything I was. Anything that showed duality was an illusion. Not sure where these thoughts came from. I was not a religious person and had never studied religion or the concept of duality. Actually, I didn't like religion very much, but I was actually aware that I must not be distracted and that I must let go of everything. Everything I loved and cared about. All the resentment and bitterness. Everything must be let go. There should be no identification with anything in me. Two spirits came to me and tried to talk to me and encouraged me to calm down. At this point, all communication was telepathic. I remember asking them if one of my favorite authors, Charles Dickens, was really a great writer because I was an avid student of literature. They answered yes, but said that Dickens wrote as if the characters in his stories were separate from him. Then I felt distracted from my meditation, so I turned away from them. They looked at me as I walked up, and I imagined them shaking their heads in pity behind me. At this moment, a huge light from a huge being appeared in front of me. My sense of ambivalence completely disappeared. Everything you read about being a being of light, joy and love matches my experience exactly. On a side note, nothing in experience has a label. A quote from Krishnamurti seems absolutely true to me. The word is not the thing it refers to. Therefore, you should read this account as my attempt to describe something that is very difficult to describe. All I can say is that I didn't think this being was God or Jesus Christ. In fact, he was so happy to see me that I have since wondered if the creature was my own soul. There was a sense of personal and energetic familiarity about this creature, and it was so full of joy to see me that I thought it could only be the better side of me. No one else could care so much about me. In contrast to this unconditional love, I asked this being if he would give the same experience to an evil person like Hitler. The question of mine was fun and interesting for him. He replied, yes, of course, anyone who wants to can have this experience. But I sensed that his answer meant that someone like Hitler probably didn't really want to have that experience. Then, desperate, took me in and contained me. My normal lower consciousness expanded and I completely dissolved into this being. For a few moments, I forgot my limited personality and became one with him. This creature had a characteristic of great individuality but special. I fully knew and identified with this quality, yet he was not separate from anything. I felt that this being was immortal, never born and never dying, and the essence of true meaning. I felt like I was experiencing my true heart. It was an amazing experience, a focus of boundless love, tremendous intelligence, and deep purpose. After a while, I noticed a red light on a part of the creature. Until that moment, everything was full of joy, laughter, and golden light. But now, a red and more serious light had appeared. This red light or ray seemed to be connected to the earth, almost like an umbilical cord, which brought awareness of earthly suffering. Also, this light was filled with a sense of selflessness. At that moment, I realized powerfully that I was still incapable of reaching this extreme level of selflessness and compassion for human suffering. It was at this moment that I separated from that creature and somehow returned to my normal identity. As I walked away, I seemed to be shown a reflection of my mental activity or inner state. The reflection was like a jagged line of light, like one you might see on a hospital monitor, and it reacted very sensitively to my inner state. I saw that if I relaxed my inner state, the line became straighter and more relaxed. Similarly, if I let myself go, the line would become a chaos of jumbled lines, and it would be very difficult to get it back under control. It seemed important to understand that I could control this line. The goal was not to make the line completely smooth, but to take control of my inner state. At that moment, I realized that my inner state was very chaotic. Finally, I saw the earth in front of me as a big round ball, as if I was in space. Around the globe, a bright pink light appeared, presenting a huge being. It was as if this creature had thrown its arms around the earth and covered it in a protective layer of love. Is that Jesus? I immediately asked. At this very moment, the huge creature pulsated at a certain point while mentioning the name of Jesus. It became clear to me that Jesus was very popular with this being and was highly respected and loved as a great servant. But I also felt that they were not the same here. Words really failed to express what I felt. Little by little, I realized that I was really dead. I thought about the people who would really miss me. My brother, my father, and my mother. I thought my father and brother would get over it, but my mother would never get over it. I couldn't believe that I had the power to cause such suffering. I began to make a deep plea to return. I had no personal desire to return. The place I was in felt like home to me and was much more real and tangible than my previous life on earth. But I didn't want to hurt my mother. I immediately started to fall. I woke up and was back in my body and found myself being carried on a stretcher through the front door to an ambulance. Considering the distance we had from the local hospital, I can say that I should have been gone for at least 10 to 15 minutes. I wish I could say that everything went well after that, but unfortunately, I was in a severe depression for many years. Seeing ourselves as we really are is not attractive. For me, there was a huge gap between my soul and my narrow, limited personality that I had created for myself. I felt like a huge failure. It also seemed like my ego was wrong. How can One trample others when we are all one. Looking back, I was probably too hard on myself. Still, I hope that progress has been made during these tumultuous 40 years. Maybe.